We've heard talks about the long list of nation-building projects, but last week we finally got the short list of 5 projects that are given top priority.
5 massive projects that are worth $60 billion that could theoretically reshape Canada's economy. That's exciting, but also most of these projects were already moving forward anyway. Yet, choosing to fast-track these specific projects is actually awfully strategic.
So what's the big deal about them? And what are these projects? And why are they more important than anything else?
It's September 2025, and Canada is facing what the Prime Minister Mark Carney calls a rapidly shifting global landscape. Trump's trade disputes with the US have not yet been resolved. Our GDP recently dropped, and unemployment is high. All this makes it imperative that we diversify the economy and stop over-relying on the US.
This is where the nation-building projects come into picture. So let's dive into these 5 priority projects and figure out what makes them so special. And by the way, we've also put together a breakdown of the 12 most expensive projects on the full list. So check that out after this video to see what didn't make the cut.
The LNG Canada facility in Kitimat, BC already started shipping liquefied natural gas to Asia this past June. And this was a big deal because it was Canada's first LNG export terminal. Now they want to build phase 2, and the timing makes sense. Currently, 98% of Canada's natural gas exports flow to the United States. But Asian LNG prices are typically 2, 3, 4, and even 5 times cheaper than in North America. And that could translate into 5 times higher profits for Canada. LNG Canada Phase 2 goal is to double production, making it the second largest facility of its kind in the world potentially, and that hopes to attract $33 billion in private capital. This isn't only a question of making more money for Canada, it's also about making Canada more independent from the US, obviously. The facility is expected to emit 35% less than the world's best LNG plants, and that can make Canada a cleaner alternative for Europe and Asia. Here's why this project needs to move fast. Shell and its partners haven't made a final investment decision yet, and without that green light, there's no guarantee that it gets built. Ottawa's bet is that fast-tracking approvals through the new Major Projects Office could shave off a year or 2 of regulatory timeline, and that is hopefully enough to tip investors towards a yes and secure a lucrative Asian contract before Qatar or the US Gulf Coast take them.
But here's where this thesis gets wonky. China, the world's largest LNG buyer and the linchpin of Asia's demand, cut its imports by 25% in the first quarter of 2025. If that slowdown continues, Canada risks pouring billions into new export capacity just as demand flattens. The Darlington nuclear generating station in Ontario has been powering Canada's homes since the 1980s. But now they are building something that's never been done before. This will be the world's first small modular reactor in any G7 country, basically a next-generation nuclear technology that's smaller, safer, and way more flexible than traditional reactors. The Darlington new nuclear project aims to build 4 300-megawatt SMR units at a cost of $20 billion. The first reactor alone is expected to power 300,000 homes, and when all 4 reactors are complete, they will generate enough clean electricity for more than 1 million homes. It's like powering an entire city of Ottawa. Aside from powering Ontario, this project can help Canada become the global leader in SMR technology. If this works, Canada could export this technology worldwide, potentially revolutionizing how countries approach clean energy. Countries are watching us, because SMRs could be the solution for places that can't build massive traditional nuclear plants. There is genuine international interest, but Canada isn't alone. The US, UK, China, and Russia, all of them are pouring resources into SMRs and advanced nuclear. And that's why it's so urgent. Curiously, this project already started nearly 3 years ago, and they received federal approval in April, so this project is already moving. But by designating it as a national priority, Canada is signaling that SMR technology is so strategically important that any remaining regulatory hurdles need to disappear fast, because whoever perfects this technology first could dominate the global clean energy market for decades. This project is essentially a pure bet to win the nuclear innovation race.
The Port of Montreal is already Canada's second largest port after Vancouver, but it's hitting capacity limits just when Canada desperately needs alternatives to US trade routes. This is where the Contrecoeur expansion project becomes a top priority nation-building project. This project is a massive new container terminal being built 40 kilometers down the St. Lawrence River. It is expected to boost the port's capacity by 60%. This $2 billion project will create a 675-meter wide docking platform with a place for ships, loading cranes, and direct rail connections. During construction, it is projected to employ nearly 8,000 workers, including steel workers using Canadian steel. And then it will create over 1,000 permanent jobs while generating an estimated $140 million annually in economic benefits. The expanded port will handle much larger ships and give Canadian exporters a direct access to European and Asian markets without having to route through US ports. This isn't just about doing more trade or getting economic independence from the United States. It's also about supporting the Canadian jobs and the declining steel industry that's been hit hard by the tariffs. We're essentially killing two birds or even three birds with one stone here. Here's why speed matters with the project. With Trump's tariffs hitting Canadian businesses, every month of delay forces more companies to ship through the US ports. And every container that detours through the US adds extra trucking, border fees, and now tariff exposure. Those costs pile up quickly, and they're all passed straight to Canadian businesses and us, the consumers.
Saskatchewan sits on one of Canada's richest mineral belts, and the McIlvenna Bay project is tapping into something the world desperately needs: copper and zinc for the green economy. Mining is known to be one of the dirtiest industries, but Foran Mining Corp is doing something different. They are building what they claim to be Canada's first net-zero copper project. I had the chance to work on the feasibility study for this project as a mechanical designer, which gave me a close-up view of how much engineering and innovation is going into making it both economically viable and environmentally responsible. This $1 billion project, located nearly 400 kilometers northeast of Saskatoon, will process up to 5,000 tons of ore daily once operational. It will create up to 1,000 jobs and is expected to boost economies in both Saskatchewan and Quebec, where the copper gets processed. This project is also already underway, and the company expects production to start by mid-2026. But there are still some regulatory and permitting gaps that the newly established MPO is tasked to fast-track to make sure that there are no delays. With China dominating global mineral processing and countries like the US scrambling to secure their own supplies, Canada is about to get well positioned to gain massive leverage. The goal with this project is to set the stage to control the supply chain for the future economy. Copper is essential for electric vehicle batteries, wind turbines, solar panels, and basically everything needed for clean energy. Not to mention that copper can be found in every cord and charger you have in your house. As countries race to electrify, whoever controls critical mineral supplies has serious leverage.
Here's the irony though. While Canada tries to mine more copper and zinc, China still dominates global mineral processing. It's expensive and environmentally challenging, so it's not clear what might end up happening beyond just mining. Based on how things are now, we might still end up shipping raw materials to China, get them to process them there, and then buy the finished product from them at higher prices.
So, more processing plants in Canada next?
We'll see. The Red Chris mine in northwest British Columbia has been operating as an open-pit copper and gold mine. But now Newmont Corp wants to go deeper, literally. They're planning a $2.6 billion expansion to transform it into an underground block cave operation. This is expected to extend the mine's life by over a decade, while increasing Canada's total copper production by 15%. The expansion is expected to employ up to 1,500 workers during construction and 800 when operational. They also commit to reducing greenhouse gas emissions by over 70% compared to current operations. There's also a proposed Northwest Critical Conservation Corridor, which is linked to this project. But here's what makes this project different from typical resource extraction. It's being developed in close collaboration with the Tahltan Nation. This isn't just a consultation, it's actually supposed to be a genuine partnership where indigenous communities have some decision-making power. By fast-tracking this project, Canada is essentially betting that they figured out how to do ethical resource development that actually respects indigenous rights and aims to accomplish the environmental goals, all while driving economic growth. If this works, it could become the template for future projects all around Canada. And if it fails, it could set back reconciliation efforts for years. Overall, this project is one of the safest projects on this list, simply because many things are already in place. So for the government, it's a low-risk project to approve easily and to fast-track.
Let's zoom into something where many nation-building projects may hit a major reality check. While Newmont and Tahltan Nation seem to have found a way to work together, many Indigenous leaders have voiced opposition to Carney's Building Canada Act, with concerns that it did not provide enough protection for Indigenous people's right to be consulted on projects impacting their land and communities. Even public polling shows Canadians are conflicted. While 74% of people support fast-tracking projects, there are serious concerns about bypassing environmental reviews and overriding provincial oversight. Zooming out, the real test isn't whether one mine can work with one nation. It's whether this approach can scale across dozens of projects and Indigenous communities without trampling rights in the name of economic urgency.
Now, if you're in Alberta, you might be wondering, where are we on this list? Despite being Canada's energy heartland and Danielle Smith's passionate lobbying for pipeline projects, no Alberta developments made the Priority 5. However, Carney did leave the door open. He pointed to the Massive Pathways Alliance carbon capture project as a candidate for the next round. But Alberta aside, here's where it also gets interesting. This specific article here reveals something crucial that the government doesn't really want us all to focus on much. It asserts that the regulatory backlog that we currently have to move these projects along has been greatly exaggerated. Well, we already know that the LNG Canada is awaiting a final investment decision. Darlington already has a license. McIlvenna Bay is already half built. The Port of Montreal expansion was already expected to start within weeks.
So, if most of these projects were already moving forward, what's really going on?
Well, some analysts say that this might be less about cutting red tape and a lot more about the government enabling financial backing for massive private investors. Think about it this way. If the government declares that your multi-billion-dollar project is a national priority, that alone can unlock financing, it can speed up permits, and, most importantly, it will make investors feel safer. It's not even as much about shovels in the ground faster, but making sure that the private companies behind LNG, nuclear, and mining feel supported. Essentially, it's all about creating visibility around the fact that this is indeed happening and it's a big thing.
These are the 5 projects that are supposed to be building, or I prefer to say accelerating, our nation. Let me know which projects should be in this list, because we aren't just stopping at 5 projects.
There's actually a draft of 32 projects, including a high-speed rail linking Quebec City and Toronto. There's Arctic ports with defense components, and the Massive Pathways Alliance carbon capture project that Alberta is so excited about.
Combined, these projects could mean billions for the Canadian economy and tens of thousands of high-paying careers.
But there is a challenge that not a lot of people talk about. Canada is still facing massive skilled labor shortages. And it's not the entry-level student labor that we've been hearing all about this summer, but the experienced skilled labor that can actually build a nuclear reactor or can design one of the world's largest LNG pipelines. Building 5 mega projects simultaneously might just drive up construction costs as companies compete for the same workers, while rural areas get all the jobs and urban taxpayers foot the bill. Overall, Canada is making a massive bet that it can build its way out of economic dependence on the United States by betting on its strongest trait, its resources.
All this is just the beginning, and none of this will happen if we have nearly 700,000 skilled trade professionals retiring in the next 5 years with no one to replace them. If we succeed, Canada can become a global energy superpower and reduce independence on US trade. Canada can also create thousands of high-paying jobs and establish itself as a leader in clean technology.
And if we fail, taxpayers will foot the bill. We'll get stuck in years of indigenous regulatory challenges and step back away from the reconciliation further. And all of this will create a perfect storm for the conservative government to say, haha, you failed. But all jokes aside, the worst part is that this could set us back in infrastructure developments for a generation.
This could be the most ambitious resource infrastructure push in Canadian history, or the most expensive political miscalculation.
The risks are incredible, but so is the potential. What do you think? Is this the infrastructure revolution that Canada needs, or is this just a risky political gamble?
Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories shaping our world and Canada.
Thank you so much for watching. And if you appreciate our content, we appreciate your support as well. Consider joining us as a YouTube member.
And we'll see you in the next one.
Take care.